My name is Sam DeLapp. I'm the program coordinator at North Carolina Campus Engagement, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to the Civically Engaged Student Webinar Series, which is what we're all here for today. So the Civically Engaged Student Webinar Series features student leaders from North Carolina Campus Engagement's network of 40 colleges and universities throughout the state. So the students who are leading the presentations in this series are both experienced and highly involved with community and civic engagement efforts on their campuses, and they are actively working to improve their campuses and our world at large. So this series highlights the different programs, projects, initiatives, skill building activities that they have all found to be both effective and successful, and they are sharing some of that wisdom with you today to hopefully inform and inspire your own civic engagement efforts. So this series takes place every Wednesday in March, so we hope that you will join us again next week. Right, so without further ado, we are excited today to get started by welcoming today's speaker, Zainab Adamou-Mohamed. Zainab is a senior at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, majoring in studio art and minoring in rhetoric and public advocacy. She's also a member of the Lloyd International Honors College. Currently, Zainab is a catalyst leader with the UNCG Office of Leadership and Civic Engagement. In the past, she has held the roles of president of the UNCG Muslim Students Association and communications intern with Democracy North Carolina, among many other involvements. When she is not working on civic problems, Zainab's interests include photography, writing, refugee and immigrant advocacy, and graphic design. So, Zainab, take it away.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the introduction, Sam, and thank you all for joining us here today on this Wednesday afternoon. I'm really excited to see some familiar faces as well as some new ones. I hope for familiar names, not faces, but I hope that we can all get to know each other better by the end of this presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides with you all, and then we can jump right into it. Alrighty, so thank you all again for joining. This webinar is part of the Civically Engaged Student Webinar Series, as Sam just mentioned, and it is titled Finding Your Civic Engagement Fit. A little bit about myself and a little bit of the things I've been involved in. Some of it was mentioned in the short biography, but I am a studio art major, minoring in rhetoric and public advocacy. I'm a catalyst leader. I've been in this role for the past few semesters. During the summer of 2023, I was a communications intern with Democracy North Carolina. And during that internship, I had the opportunity to publish a podcast episode for their podcast Built by Us, titled The Role of First-Generation Immigrants in the Movement. I've also attended the inaugural Diaspora Organizers Gathering with the Friends Committee on National Legislation. This was on Capitol Hill, and it invited diaspora organizers from across the states to come together and learn about storytelling, do some workshops. I've also had experience in lobbying on the local, state, and national level, some voter outreach initiatives here in the state, as well as experience with written and visual storytelling. So a little bit about what we're going to get into this afternoon. We will be defining civic engagement and community building. We will be identifying your passions, interests, and values. We will do a short activity about finding your civic engagement fit. We will touch on short and long-term solutions. We will talk about where to find civic engagement opportunities. We'll run through a brief case study on the UNCG Catalyst program, and then I'll wrap it up with some resources and open up the floor to questions. Alrighty, to begin, I want to ask you all to answer this question. What is civic engagement? Feel free to drop a few words in the chat of what comes to mind, or a definition if you have one. If you want to go ahead and say it out loud as well, that's also fine, whatever you're comfortable with. And we'll pause for a couple minutes here to do that. All right, I see to engage with your community. Thank you for that, Brianna. That is very true. That is what we're going to really get into today. Being involved in the community through volunteerism or outreach, that is definitely a part of it, Ellie. Working to better your community in a meaningful way, for sure. That meaningful part is often very important, especially when you're reflecting on how your service impacted the community in a way. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and jump right into some definitions. So civic engagement, as defined by this excerpt from an essay, is working together to make a difference in the civic life of our communities and developing the combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make that difference. It means promoting the quality of life in a community through both political and non-political processes. And that last part is important. Civic engagement is both political and non-political. It is not one or the other. It is not just one thing. Community building can also be defined. It is promoting a sense of connection and unity among individuals in a group. Communities can be created around shared locations, beliefs, interests, or memberships. So your community can be anything from your state to your city, to maybe your residence hall, to a house of worship that you attend, to your sports team. Community has a very versatile definition. And when we bring together civic engagement and community, we are building bonds, realizing shared goals, collaborating effectively with those around us. The ultimate outcome is creating positive change. So as Brianna said, civic engagement and community building go hand in hand. So now we're going to get into the different types of civic engagement. It's important to identify that there are so many different kinds. Oftentimes, elections are the big civic engagement event that comes to mind for people, especially students. Getting out the vote is certainly important. Registering people to vote and also keeping your registration updated are all big ways to be civically engaged. There's also volunteering and service learning, as someone mentioned, volunteerism. So giving back your time to the community to work on an action, to work on a task that will better the community and meet a need. I also like to add that service learning is also tied with volunteering. So service learning often involves that component of education. So learning about the community you're serving, learning about the population you're serving. Service also is not a one-way street. It's also you learning from the community you are serving, whether that's through gaining a new perspective, whether that's through maybe examining your own perspectives on a community before you served them. There's also writing op-eds. So this can often be called like a letter to the editor almost. So writing an op-ed is when you submit your ideas to a publication, whether that's a print publication or an online publication. You can respond to something that's been published in that publication, or you can respond to something that's happening in current events. And if your op-ed is accepted, it will be published. And oftentimes that will be in the opinion section. Anyone can write an op-ed. It's not limited to, say, an English major or someone with a certain level of education. Op-eds are very open to everyone. Activism, advocacy, and community organizing are also a type of civic engagement. So activism, oftentimes we think of protest, we think of those actions that when we get out into the community and we use our bodies to make a statement. This could be like a sit-in, a protest, any of those things. Advocacy is speaking up on behalf of a community, speaking up on behalf of yourself, a family member for a certain issue. Over time, you can write petitions, you can write letters to those in power. You can advocate for a change. Community organizing involves bringing people together, meeting them where they are, getting people to where they need to be to affect a change. So community organizing often starts on the very local one-to-one level, and you build up those relationships, you build up those bonds. So when it is time to take action, everyone is where they need to be and the change will be really effective. There's also lobbying and contacting your representatives. So this is when you go to the office of your representative, whether it's their local office, whether you're at Capitol Hill and meeting with them, and you're trying to get them to take action on a certain bill or to raise awareness about an issue in your community. Anyone is welcome to lobby. If you are the constituent of a lawmaker, it is your, I would say, responsibility to make sure they are aware of what's happening and to make your voice heard to them. Contacting your representatives can look like calling them, sending emails, or sending even physical letters to their office. There's financial support, which I think is pretty self-explanatory, so donating money to an organization. I also like to think of in-kind donations, so donating materials to an organization that they might need in order to fulfill the tasks that they want to. There's attending community events and city council meetings. So this is going to your city council meeting, submitting a public comment, submitting a request to speak at the meeting, and talking directly to your city council in a public space about an issue that you care about. There's also learning about your local government. So learning the ins and outs of how your town or city works, learning what bills or ordinances they are working on currently, who's on the city council. Oftentimes, these are people who are your neighbors, who are very local to you. And running for office is a really big part of civic engagement. It's something that anyone can do, but I do know there are like financial barriers, there are historical barriers that do keep certain populations from running for office. But I think running for office is something that everyone should, I would say, be open to or to think about as a form of civic engagement. So now that we've covered all of that about civic engagement, I want to ask what you are all passionate about. So we will connect those passions to civic engagement later. But right now, I want you to start thinking about things you are passionate about. This can be an academic area. This can be a hobby. This can be a certain issue or cause that you really care about. And I'd like you all to drop those in the chat, please. Okay, we see accessible transportation. That is very important. See what else we've got. The environment. Yes, especially now that the weather is starting to get nice, more people are outside. The arts, art museums and theaters and libraries and literacy. Yes, I am with you on that as an art major. Architecture, yeah. And there are so many different aspects of architecture, like affordable housing, accessible architecture, equitable opportunities for English language learners. Yes, that's also really important. Language access, passionate about public education, LGBTQ representation, honest history about racism, immigrant and refugee support. Those are all really great passions to have, and so relevant right now, I think, with how diverse our communities are becoming. Alrighty, if you have more passions, please do put them in the chat because we will be working with them later on. So now we're going to talk a little bit about those passions, interests, and values and sort of work on how to identify them. So I want to start by saying that everyone has a role in the movement. You can be the person who's on the front lines of a protest with the megaphone, or the person who's creating petitions or writing an op-ed from your computer. You can be the person who's giving back your time by assisting with a free dental clinic in the neighborhood, or you can be the person who's in the halls of power meeting with Congress on Capitol Hill trying to get them to pass a bill. And that's all to say that you are the person who is able to create positive change. So there are so many different roles in the movement. I think it's really important because civic engagement can seem to be one certain thing. I know for me, I always thought, well, being the person at protests is like the ultimate form of civic engagement, but I'm an introvert. I couldn't be the person at the front lines of a protest, but I could be the person contributing in other ways. We can also talk about values. So values are those things, those beliefs or viewpoints that you hold really deeply. They impact your daily life, your future plans, and how you interact with others. So some examples of values could be knowledge. You could value generosity, spirituality, family, accomplishment. These are the things that are really, really true to you and don't often change so easily when you're thinking about these different issues. It's also important to identify those matters of concern or issue areas. Those are things that are happening in the world that are affecting the people, their well-being, the environment, or society. They're debatable and they often require a solution, so there can often be different opinions on how to best approach a matter of concern or whether a matter of concern is even a matter of concern to begin with. Some examples could be racial inequality, climate change, healthcare access, or hunger. And matters of concern are very wide-reaching, and they often kind of emerge from your own lens and lived experiences. So I might not be aware of a matter of concern because of my privileges, while someone else might be aware of them. So keeping all that in mind, keeping in mind the types of civic engagement, keeping in mind those values and interests and skills, we're going to start to bring them together and think about how we can be civically engaged. And I bring this quote, which reads, "Figure out what breaks your heart in the world, that's your purpose," as sort of a way to frame how we're going to look at that. What is the thing that breaks your heart? What is the thing that you think about before you go to sleep at night, the thing that keeps you up, the thing that's in your news feed that makes you stand up a little bit straighter and pay attention? Those are the things that are going to drive you to be civically engaged. And we can be really ambitious and creative about how we combine those matters of concern with our interest, with our skills to be civically engaged. So I'm now going to run you through a little activity. And this is one way of thinking of how to overlap those values, interests, and skills. I'm going to run us through a couple of examples, and then I'm going to ask you all to try to think through using this framework. So keep in the back of your mind how you might start bringing together those interests and skills and putting them into the civic engagement framework. So I'll read out the first example. I value education. It breaks my heart that there are still barriers to accessing a quality education in my community. I am also passionate about immigrant and refugee rights. I am fluent in Spanish and French, which is spoken by many people in my community. I could participate in an initiative to translate informational materials for immigrants and refugees who are seeking to advance their education or are preparing to enroll in school. So let's break this down. You have your value, you really deeply value education, and there's a matter of concern there. There are still barriers to accessing a quality education in your community. And perhaps in this case, it's language access. So a lot of those informational materials are not taking into account the amount of people who don't have English as a first language in your community. You're also passionate about immigrant and refugee rights. So that is something that is very interesting to you. You know a lot about it. You're very familiar with it. And then you have your skill. Maybe you are fluent in Spanish and French. And this is just an example. Perhaps you are someone who has Spanish speakers in your household, so you are familiar with the language and you can move easily between French and Spanish and English. So then you have your civic engagement fit. You are volunteering, you are service learning, you are giving back your time to translate informational materials for immigrants and refugees. And this is helping you to achieve a goal, which is helping them to advance their education. So that's one way to look at it. Here's another example that sort of looks at it from a slightly different angle. I'm going to read it out. I've noticed that there is a limited access to fresh fruit and vegetables in my neighborhood. I love the environment and being outdoors. I have skills in gardening and landscaping. So maybe you have a green thumb. It's really easy for you to get a garden going to start organizing the planting times and things like that. So I can advocate at a city council meeting for my city to open community gardens where there are food deserts. Or I can organize like-minded individuals to collaborate with the city to start a community garden. So again, you have your matter of concern. There's a food desert in your neighborhood. There is not access to fresh fruit and vegetables. You have your interests, something you enjoy doing. And this is important because we should do the things we enjoy, and we should do things that we have interest in because they make them all the more impactful. So you love the environment and being outdoors. You have skills, again, in gardening and landscaping. So you really know a lot about what it takes to start a garden, how to maintain a garden for the long term. Your civic engagement fit could be advocating at a city council meeting for your city to open community gardens. So you know what it takes and you tell the city council, this is what needs to happen step by step for this to happen and why it would be important. Or you could be an organizer. You could start on the very grassroots level and you could get other people who are passionate about these things to collaborate with the city to start a community garden. So you value collaboration, you're really good with teamwork, and you think that all these voices should be able to contribute. That is a way to find your civic engagement fit. So now I'm going to ask you all to start brainstorming your civic engagement fits. This can be using this framework. This can be perhaps a list or a paragraph or just a few fragmented ideas, whatever makes the most sense to you and whatever is the easiest for you. And I'm going to give you, let's say about a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, to think about things and drop them in the chat if you feel comfortable, or if people are feeling extra excited, they can say them out loud. And I'll go ahead and read it out. So this is the sort of framework. I've noticed that your matter of concern is happening in your community. This can be your city, state, wherever you find community. You then think about what you are passionate about, your passions or interests, and what you strongly value. And then you can think about the skills that you have or the knowledge or expertise. And then this last part is important. You identify the action or activity, the form of civic engagement that you can do at a certain place, at an event, or on a platform online. And this will be in order to create that desired outcome or solution. So the sort of so what of your civic engagement, those are important. So I'm going to mute myself and sort of let you guys think about this on your own and brainstorm some ideas. Alrighty, we've got one response in the chat so far. Thank you, Brianna. I'm going to go ahead and read this out. If you have responses as well, please drop them in the chat and feel free to share with everyone so we can look at different ways to think about how we find our civic engagement fit. So Brianna says, I am passionate about community and disability rights. I am interested in accessible transportation and active communication. I can work with my city government to help design accessible forms of transportation and advocate for a better relationship with the citizens of my city and our government. So that's really great, Brianna. You have the thing that you're passionate about and the things that you're interested in. You have an action item so you can work with your city government to help design accessible forms of transportation. And you also have another form, which is advocating for a better relationship between the citizens of the city and the government. So you're looking at it from different angles. You're thinking about how can my city government be more aware of what the citizens are going through. And you're also thinking up of a way to collaborate with the city government to ultimately improve accessibility and transportation. And I think that's a really great way to look at it from, I assume, a local level. So you're really getting down to the local and the hyper-local issues in your community. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have anything they want to add or any responses to Brianna's? Oh, we've got another response. Okay, I've noticed that there are intensifying pressures on public school teachers as antagonism to difference has ramped up. I'm passionate about the role of diverse books in helping students grow and know that they are valued. I can speak at school board meetings to ensure the school board knows that people in the community value diverse books rather than censorship. That's a really great response. Thank you, Dr. Applegarth. So you're thinking about it as you're seeing that matter of concern and you're seeing that it's becoming more prevalent in the community and you're responding to that by thinking up a way to engage with your school board. And you have that underlying passion about diverse books and how important they are and how they can impact students. I know you as a professor, you are most certainly aware of how books can affect students and help them out. So this is a really great way to think about it as well. School board meetings are another great way to get civically involved. So not just your city council, but also the school board, which directly impacts what students are learning in the community. So we know it starts with education, it moves up. Here's one from Madison. I am passionate about students' academic success. I strongly value student success within academic and career goals. I have skills in tutoring and supervising students and facilitation, allowing me to curate conversations with students to ensure they have a worthwhile experience. An action item for me is to explore jobs in this area to advocate for student success. I really like this perspective because you're thinking about skills that you've had in the past and you're wanting to apply them to a career. So you want to think of a long-term way to get involved with this matter of concern, which is academic success. And I think it's also great that you're thinking about the skills that you've had with tutoring and supervising students. And I think from a perspective of a college student, a lot of us have worked with our peers or have tutored. So we have the skills and knowledge to do so and impact our community. And I also love the word action item. That is a really great word to use. So your action item is a thing that you are going to do, your next step. Okay, I am going to take the opportunity to move to the next slide, but if you do have more ways that you are finding your civic engagement fit, please do put them in the chat, and towards the end, we might revisit them. So keeping all of that in mind, what you've just seen from the other responses, and as well as the examples I shared at the beginning, these are just some more ways that you can think about how you find your civic engagement fit. So maybe you're really good with Photoshop and graphic design software, so you are going to use those skills to create signs for a local protest. Or maybe you have an issue that you really want your lawmaker to take action on, and you know that if everyone in your friend group sent a letter to that lawmaker at once, it would really put the pressure on them. So you organize a letter writing party and you have everyone write about these concerns from a personal place and send them off. Or maybe you are really passionate about music and you are also really passionate about animal welfare. And you set up a community concert where you donate the proceeds to a local animal shelter. So you are asking people to provide their skills and their financial abilities to benefit the animal shelter. And this is all to say that there are countless ways that you can bring together the different parts of your identity, interests, and ideas in order to get civically engaged. There's no right or wrong way to do it. There's no certain level you have to reach. Just simply getting engaged is important. So with all that being said, I did want to touch on the idea of short and long-term solutions. So there are different ways to look at a matter of concern, and there are different ways to think about how it's a process. So it's not always a one and done thing. There are things you need to be doing in the short term, and there are things you need to be doing in the long term to create change. So to dive into this deeper, say your goal is ending hunger in your state. A short-term solution would be volunteering at a food pantry once a week to help alleviate the immediate or urgent need, which is getting food out to people who need it now because hunger does not wait. At the same time, you can be meeting with your lawmakers continuously during the legislative session, so over several weeks, to advocate for a bill that addresses child hunger in the long term. So this is a long-term solution that will have lasting impacts and will be a lot more permanent. In both cases, you are civically engaged and each process has its place in the overall movement. So this is all just to say that it's important to realize that there are different ways to address the matter of concern, and there are different ways to work towards a solution. So now that we've sort of thought about the ways we want to be civically engaged, we've thought about how to combine those values, passions, and interests with the different types of civic engagement. I wanted to share some ways to find those civic engagement opportunities. There's Volunteer Match. This is a great website that allows you to put in those parameters like your skills, like different causes, like your location, whether it's in person or virtual, into this website, and it'll help you find organizations that are looking for those who can give back their time or efforts. There's also your campus civic engagement office. This can be called your Office of Leadership and Civic Engagement or your Office of Civic Engagement. This is a great way to get involved with your campus community, but also to find those civic engagement opportunities that range outward, so within the state, within the county. Your town or city website is another great place. Maybe you really want to get involved with the city council and you really want to know what's happening on the city level. Your city website will often have an agenda and a list of meetings, so you can submit a request to leave a comment. You can submit a request to speak in person at the meeting. There's also the local organizations and nonprofits that align with your values and interests. If you look up, say, your matter of concern plus nonprofit, you will find different ways to get involved in that regard. And this can look like volunteering with these organizations, or this can look like supporting them through their calls to action. So maybe they need you to sign on to a letter that will go to a lawmaker. There's also local mutual aid groups. So if you really want to be on the ground, interacting with people, mutual aid asks the community to support someone who might need financial need, who might need material support, who might need other forms of support. I usually find these on social media. So there's Greensboro Mutual Aid, for example. And I've also found that a lot of mutual aid groups will also show ways to support through protests and other in-person actions as well. So shifting gears a bit, I wanted to give a little case study of one form of civic engagement that I've been involved in through my university, the Catalyst program. This is a picture from one of our past Catalyst days last semester, and it was centered on the theme of environmental sustainability. So we traveled to a local elementary school and we cleaned up trash around the elementary school. And we had a pretty good group of students, and we all had a really great time. So talking more about Catalyst, Catalyst is, again, civic engagement that is centered around service learning. So it is under the Office of Leadership and Civic Engagement at UNCG, but it is a student-led effort. You have a team of student employees who are getting their peers engaged in the community, and they are under a graduate assistant who is under the office. So these are themed service days throughout the semester on Saturday, and they happen at 2 different sites in the triad. So in the morning, you'll be at one community partner. In the afternoon, you'll be at a different community partner. And at the end of the day, students also participate in a reflection about their service. So they are not only doing the service, but they are thinking about the service, thinking about what they did, why they did it, what they can do next. And the program is very accessible. All transportation and lunch is provided to students, so on-campus and off-campus students can participate easily. And I've seen, as a Catalyst leader, students will come through and they will sign up for multiple Catalyst days throughout the semester, or they'll go on to participate in ongoing service with a community partner they've interacted with on a Catalyst Day. So perhaps they interact with an organization. They really loved working with the organization. They might end up volunteering or service learning with them for the rest of the semester, the rest of their undergraduate career. So Catalyst overall helps to make service more accessible, but it also helps students to gain exposure to a wide range of partners and issue areas. So students find their potential for civic engagement during a time when they are exploring their interests and passions. When you come into university, perhaps you are in a new place. You are perhaps in a city that is a lot larger or a lot more diverse than the one you are used to, and you are trying to figure out your identity. So maybe you come in thinking, I'm not really someone who gets involved with civic engagement. I'm not really someone who's out there doing these things. And then they engage with Catalyst and they realize their potential. And the tagline of Catalyst is be a spark for change. So we are sparking students to be a change maker in their community, but we are also sparking a new part of students within themselves and helping them realize their potential. So wrapping up, here are a few more resources that you can utilize. I tried to keep these links short if you want to screenshot it and find them later. If you really want to be the person who's lobbying Congress, the Friends Committee on National Legislation has a great resource about lobbying and how to get involved with meeting your representatives. They give you all the details from how to research, how to make your ask, how to follow up with your lawmaker afterwards. Again, if you are really passionate about service, Volunteer Match is a great resource. If you're someone who really wants to write to your local publication and to speak on an issue that you care about, the Op-Ed Project has great resources for the sort of step-by-step of writing an op-ed, what an op-ed looks like. And I want you all to remember that anyone can submit an op-ed. It is not only for a certain group or education level. Again, if you want to find your representatives, not only to meet with them, but also to learn more about the bills that are currently moving through Congress. Congress's website has a way to find your member based on your address. It's also important to note that we have representatives not only on the national level, so we have US Senate, US House, we have state level representatives as well. So there is also a way to find your North Carolina representative if you Google that, and you can find your General Assembly members. I've also included the Catalyst link if you want to learn more about Catalyst and kind of see how we operate over at UNCG. This is a great website to start with. All right, and that is wrapping up the end of this presentation. Thank you again so much for all joining. If you would like to reach out to me and talk more about different forms of civic engagement or ways to get involved, my email is here. You can also reach out to Sam as well. I did want to see if there were any more responses in the chat. And I do see one from Ellie stating, I strongly value literacy and access or exposure to the arts, such as museums and writing. I've noticed there's a lack of enthusiasm around the arts and literacy in my community. I have previous experience in public speaking and writing, so I can spend time highlighting my experiences in the arts through writing an op-ed or letters to my representative about their importance, and speak at a local council event to discuss my ideas on how to further create enthusiasm and investment. That is a really great, well-rounded response, Ellie. I really like that you're thinking about ways to get your lawmakers to speak up about the arts, but also writing an op-ed so other people in the community can see how important the arts are. That is everything from me. If there are any questions or any more responses or things to think about, the floor is yours, audience.
Thank you so much, Zainab. Yes, everybody, please input your questions into the chat or feel free to speak out. But while y'all are thinking of your questions, I just want to thank you so much for this wonderful presentation that was so engaging. And I really appreciated that phrase, everyone has a role in the movement. That's definitely something that I'm going to be taking away. So thank you. But yes, everyone, if you do have questions, please feel free to put it into the chat. Zainab, I am curious, how did you initially get involved in Catalyst? How did you start out?
Yes, so with Catalyst, I originally had wanted to apply to be a democracy fellow at UNCG, but because of a previous campus job I had, I wouldn't be able to have the job in the spring semester. So I actually asked about Catalyst, about other opportunities, and they reached out back to me and they had an opening, and I was able to get involved. I had been aware of Catalyst before that, but Catalyst is such a popular program at UNCG that I never managed to get a spot to volunteer with them. So my first Catalyst day was actually being a Catalyst leader and learning more about Catalyst through that. Okay, I see some things in the chat as well. Um, Brianna leaves a really good point about using the Five Calls website to learn how to speak to representatives. I've heard of the Five Calls website, and I think it's also great because I know for me, I get nervous speaking to representatives, but having that sort of support through the scripts they provide is really great. From Dr. Applegarth, I see do you have advice for others who feel nervous about things such as calling a representative or speaking to strangers in public, and how can folks address those feelings of nervousness? I think what Brianna shared was really great. So having a script, even if it's just typing it out on your notes app, what you want to say and reading from that, representatives will listen to you no matter what when you call them. I think also just practicing with your friends. So getting a friend to listen to you speak about your issue area and how to organize your thoughts, also great. I think also just realizing that it's not going to be the first time where you're the superstar public speaker, but practicing over time. I think warming yourself up to what you want to say is also great.
All right, any other questions? Going once, going twice. All right, wonderful. Well, that was not your last chance. If you do think of any questions in the meantime, definitely do feel free to reach out. The email is on the screen. I'm also putting my email in the chat if you would like to connect with me separately. I am happy to connect to you more with Zainab so you can hear all about her great work that she's doing over at UNC Greensboro. So thank you all so much for coming out. Zainab, thank you so much for that engaging activity. That's what a creative and exciting way to think about finding your fit in civic life. Thank you to all of you who came out today. And again, this is a series that takes place every Wednesday, so I hope that we will see you all next week. You will get a recording of this presentation, so you can watch it back, share it with your friends, share it with your family, and get everyone involved so that they can keep serving and making an impact on their community in the best way possible. So thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we hope we'll see you soon. Enjoy.